Welcome back to the Barbells, Bikinis and Biz podcast. So we're in for another guest podcast today, and the subject is going to be on natural bodybuilding as a female. More specifically, looking at bodybuilding and natural bodybuilding as a figure competitor, looking at the reality of it, the challenges, and things people may not have thought about and considered. So I'm joined today by Grace Jones, who you may or may not know of, but if you're not aware, Grace, just introduce yourself, who you are, quick background, and 3 interesting facts about yourself.
Oh God, it's like an interview process.
Yeah. That question, ready question. So tell me something interesting about yourself.
No, and your mind just goes blank.
I'll do 3 now, so.
Oh God, okay. Well, my name's Grace Jones, like you said. I am a online coach. Well, I was a PT and online coach, but obviously no one's PTing at the moment. So I'm an online coach. I completed my first season as a figure competitor last year, and I'm currently in my off season at the moment. 3 facts. Let's think. So one that always comes up, it just happens to be the first choice. I grew up in Spain. I moved there when I was about 9, and I moved back to England about 4 years ago. So I was there for about 15 years. So I can speak Spanish. That's generally the first one to come up. Another fact. I'm a bit of a geek. I've got loads of like figurines and stuff like that on Star Wars, Batman, Harry Potter, Game of Thrones. I love it. I love collecting them.
Harry Potter.
Yeah, I could probably like recite all the lines to all the movies. I absolutely love them. Third one. I'll probably go for about 3 kilos of strawberries a week.
Wow.
Yeah. That's probably
not in season then. What do you do when they're not in season?
I'll find them. I'll find them.
Okay. Nice. So just a bit about yourself to get more into the background of you. Sort of how did you, because you're PT online coach, so how did you sort of get into fitness, into the industry itself, both in terms of you getting into bodybuilding for the training aspect, but also for sort of the business side of it, and how you got into the industry for work?
Well, I've always been into sports. I used to swim competitively when I was younger, along with other sports like track and just all sorts like martial arts, things like that. And when I was in school, I always wanted to be a PT. It always seemed like something that I was like, yeah, that's out of all the things that you could do, I was like, I'd love to do that. That'd be really cool. And it wasn't, I only became a PT about, I think it was 5 years ago. So it wasn't until I was in my mid-20s that I started doing that. And it came about because I started training in a gym when I think I was 21 at the time, when I actually first started going to the gym. And it was during the time when I'd tried to move back to England. I was still living in Spain at the time, and I'd come back to England for a few months to give it a go. I really wasn't happy, hated it. And the only sort of thing I had to do was I just started going to the gym to give myself something to do, because I wasn't working at the time or anything. I was feeling pretty, had a lot of sort of like trouble with anxiety at the time, like social anxiety and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Got myself to the gym when I was feeling like that, but at the time it just seemed like the best thing to do. And I just got absolutely like hooked on it. I just could not stop watching like YouTube videos on training, learning about nutrition, and my life just started to revolve around it, as it does for most people who get into it. And then a few years passed by. I'd gone back to Spain, then I came back to England again, which is since I've stayed since then. And it just kind of like becoming a PT, it just kind of came to me.
Yeah, it just felt natural.
Yeah, well, like the opportunity, really, because I'd always wanted to do it. And I don't know about you, but when you look online, when I was younger, when I looked online on how to get the qualification and stuff, it was very like daunting. I didn't know where to start.
Yeah.
Or the course, like thousands and thousands of pounds. So I always just kind of was put off by it. And I joined a gym here, and it just kind of like the opportunity came to me to become, to do like an apprenticeship through them and do my course and everything, which I obviously like snapped up.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, but I wasn't, I didn't end up doing the apprenticeship with them. I just paid for it myself and did my course and everything. And then it just progressed from there. And it just sort of grew organically.
Yeah.
By
Was that
working
the
the
first
gym
bit of studying you did, or did you sort of go to uni and have a career change or anything like that?
No, the education in Spain, it's not great. I went to an English school, so I did my GCSEs, and then I went back to start my AS levels, and I managed about 2 months, and then I left school. And then any work that I did after that was like, in Spain, there's not a lot of jobs.
So I just had to pause that a second because I've got a lot of background noise, which I basically just stopped. So to continue with the podcast.
Education jobs and stuff like that. So I left school before I did A levels, and in Spain the work isn't, you haven't got a lot of option. You've got like telesales, waitressing, which I did both of those, and I also did like gardening, and I worked in a tattoo studio for years before coming back to England. So nothing was really in line with my fitness goals or anything like that.
Yeah.
It wasn't until I moved back to England that I got into it.
Sure. And then obviously, so then you got into sort of the PT. Was it always resistance training that you liked, that style of training, or with, because a lot of people start on the cardio bunny life, what was the sort of transition on that side of things?
For myself or with clients?
For yourself, your own journey with that.
Yeah, it's always been resistance-based training. I think I had a pretty good like entrance into it. I don't think I ever followed any like really bad advice. I wasn't obsessed with cardio or anything like that. I had quite a nice like smooth introduction to it.
Yeah.
Probably because I just watched so many videos on it and found the right videos. I guess there's a lot of good information out there as well as bad. So I happen to follow the good stuff. So I always, for myself, it's always been weight training. And resistance-based training, and then with my clients it's just dependent on what they enjoy doing, really.
So from getting into resistance training, how did that transition then into wanting to compete into the bodybuilding side of things?
Well, when I first started training, I couldn't tell you who it was that I'd seen like competing as a bikini competitor, but I used to see quite a lot of it, and I remember thinking it would just be a really cool goal to have, like to be able to like to get that shredded, to go up on, it wasn't necessarily getting up on stage, but it was having that goal of like seeing yourself looking like that and getting to that point. So I think it was always something that I wanted to do, but I didn't think about it too much until a couple of years ago. And it was just like having chats with people who, like colleagues, other PTs that I worked with who also wanted to do it. That it started to become more of like something that I was actually considering. And it just sort of it just went from there. Like I did want to compete in bikini. I can't even imagine doing that now. It would be so weird. But I did want to do that. And speaking with my colleague who also wanted to do a physique competition, we decided that it would be a good idea to get coaches for the off season. So that's when I started researching who to coach with and approached AJ. And it all just sort of went from there, really.
It just fell into place. So was it your decision to then transition? Was it a mutual decision, or was it when you first approached AJ, did he flat out tell you you're not doing bikini? Sort of what happened for the transition from thinking you were going into bikini to figure?
Well, to start with, like all my I'd said on my application form, I was like, I want to do bikini, but a few people have told me I'd be suited for figure. So let me know what you think, kind of thing. And I think after a few months, he was like, I 100% think you should be figure, but we'll see how you go as you diet down. And it just sort of transitioned in that direction. I think I started to get a bit more comfortable because when I was doing check-in photos, I was doing like, to start with, I was doing more bikini poses. But as I started playing around with like figure poses, it just came way more naturally to me. And I could see that I was more comfortable in those poses. My shape was much better suited for it. So it just carried on that way, and it just transitioned quite nicely. But I can't imagine when I was actually at shows watching bikini competitors, they look amazing, but I was like, I could not do that. I'd look ridiculous.
That's another thing as well. Had you been to shows previously before sort of thinking the idea was cool? You never actually been to a show?
No.
just the gram.
I just get like, I'm the type of person that I get an idea in my head and I just want to do it and I'll go for it. I'll just give it everything. So
I think a lot of people in this sort of sport do have that though. We have that mentality of getting something in our heads and just working towards it. It's a good trait to have. It has its positives and
you
negatives.
need it, don't you?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, totally.
So I followed, without sounding like a complete creep, I did follow your sort of 2019 comp prep quite in depth for a multitude of reasons. One, I think AJ's great. He was one of the first people I ever got into and listened to, like his podcast with Vicky, who is now my coach. So I followed them for years. They've always been people who are respected and provided a lot of good stuff, like you said, the good education side of things, a lot of useful information. So obviously he posts a lot about his clients, and this was the year I was going to compete for the first time. And so seeing, because not many people were posting things about natural figure competitors, there wasn't many, obviously a lot of people do it, but there wasn't much on social media, like people documenting it. So to then see someone doing it, I was like, oh great, this is someone who I can relate to and follow. So I did follow it quite a lot, and I watched AJ's stories and was quite interested and invested in it for sure.
Yeah.
So if you just want to sort of talk through it yourself as to how long, what sort of prep you had, how long it was, what shows you did. Obviously, I'm very aware of it, but let's hear it from you. So if you have 29 prep experience.
So I started prep on the 4th of March.
Yeah.
And I believe it was going to be a minimum of, I think it was 27 weeks, to really keep it nice and long, retain as much muscle as possible, make it nice and easy, give us lots of time. I think my first show was, they were meant to be the start of September. So I was doing the UK DFBA, Northern, and I was doing the BNBF. I can't remember which one it was because it changed. They changed it so it was exactly the same date as the UK DFBA one. It was
brilliant.
Like, right, right. So I'm going to have to change it here. So my prep ended up being, the first show was the middle of August. So we had to bring it up forwards, I think about 2 or 4 weeks, something like that, which was terrifying. When he said, like, that's the option, we can do that, I was like, I'm not going to be ready for this. Like, how can I? But I think looking back, that was actually my best look on the show that was earlier than all of them. So I did the BNBF Midlands in the end, which was my first show, and I came first in that one. Which is mad because I don't know if many people know this, but I nearly missed that show. I had to run from my apartment to the stage basically, and it was absolutely horrific, but I think it helped because then I had no time to get nervous.
You didn't think about it, you had to do it.
No, I just had to get on stage. So it was good. And then I think it was 2 weeks later, I did the UK TFBA Northern, which was near Manchester. We did fit body and figure in that competition because we still weren't sure whether I'd be more suited to one or the other, because fit body is just that little bit sort of leaner. They have the muscular poses as well. So I did both of them. I came first in figure and I came third in fit body. And after hearing the feedback, it was definitely going to be figure. Because they just gave me an invite for the finals for figure, but you could have got an invite on the fit body one as well. And then I had the BNBF final up in Perth in Scotland. It was Perth. It shows I can't remember a lot from being on prep, which was at the end of September. I came second in that. And then a few weeks later, we had the UK DFBA British Finals, which was in Coventry. And that's where I came first, which was such a cool day. It was just amazing. The atmosphere up in Perth, like, I think it's a long way to go. There wasn't as many people there, so it wasn't an amazing atmosphere, but the one down in Coventry, it was brilliant. And then I got an invite to go to Worlds in New York, which was amazing, and I came third there, which was the middle of November. So it ended up being, I think, like a 39-week prep in total, so it was really long.
Just the 39 weeks, no
just a pregnancy of a prep.
Now, for anyone sort of listening who maybe like myself, looking to do it first time, I think you couldn't really say that you could ask for much more from your first year to place top 3 and to win a lot. Were you expecting that sort of? What were your expectations going into shows and hopes going into shows?
I wouldn't say I was expecting it. I wanted it. Like, I'm quite competitive and I expect a lot from myself. So that was what I wanted. That was my goal. And I think after, like, I never expected to win the first one. I don't know. I just never thought I did, even though I wanted to. And then I think after that, it sort of gave me a little bit more confidence that I could I could sort of go into them and potentially win them, the other ones that I was doing. So I don't know, your confidence grows the better you do.
100%.
So yeah.
And obviously this is something I considered and toyed around with as a natural competitor. It's especially in the more muscular categories such as figure, it makes it harder for us to stand up against people in say, other federations like PCA, Two Bros. For that reason, was that why you've never looked into those federations, or what stood out to you? It's just doing the natural ones.
The federations were more the ones that AJ recommended to me. Obviously because they're natural as well, so you don't have to, like you said, stand up against girls who could potentially be assisted. I think PCA would be a cool one to do because of the posing routine.
Yeah.
And it's something that I'm considering for the next time that I compete. But because that's not the main goal, the main goal is getting back on the WNBF world stage and getting my pro status. And because that is the main goal, if the PCA one could potentially get in the way of that, or for any reason it sort of clashes with it, then it won't be something that I'll pursue, because that would just be kind of for the shits and giggles kind of thing.
Yeah,
just for the experience.
Yeah.
So they're the, like, PCA is one that I've considered, but I'm quite happy sticking with like the BNBF, the UKDFBA ones.
Yeah,
for sure.
Now, I think most people, I don't know if you experienced this, when you tell them how long your prep was originally going to be, so that 20 plus weeks, the reaction is like, why so long? I don't know if you experienced that from people, but the people I've sort of surrounded myself with typically are more sort of have done or known of the more typical sort of 16 weeks. So mine this year was going to be a similar length to yours. I started end of January and it was going to be September shows, so 20 plus 30 weeks, and people's reaction was, why so long? Now, what was your experience like having that long prep, in terms of, do you think it held benefit? Do you think it would, quote unquote, easier in some respects, harder in some respects? And I know you've not done a 16 week, so you couldn't compare, but how did you find it for people, and how maybe explain the benefits so people understand why maybe as a natural competitor a longer prep is better?
Yeah, well, having a longer prep is gonna help us retain muscle, basically, because you won't have to go so extreme. You can keep your food relatively high. I was quite lucky that I could keep my food at quite a good point all the way through prep. So with it being long, I never had to go silly low on calories. I think the lowest my calories were for the week on average with the high and low days was like 1800.
That's really good, to be honest.
Yeah, it's amazing. So that's one of the big factors. Like, you can keep food high, you can keep energy levels a bit higher and retain muscle. You've got more chance of retaining muscle, which at the end of the day is what we want. We want to lose the fat and retain as much muscle as possible. With regards to the length of the prep, like you said, I'd mostly heard about people doing 12, 16 weeks prep. So I was a little bit like shocked at the length of time that I was going to initially be prepping for. But I trust AJ and I trust his decisions and everything. So I just do as I'm told, and it worked out well. I think in the long run, I think me and AJ both agree that it was a long time prepping in the end. Yeah. And I looked better sort of in the middle of that prep, so more on the first competitions. And that's just something that you learn, isn't it? You learn as you go. So you're not going to go into a first prep and know everything and know exactly how your body's going to react. But that's something that we know for next time. So maybe we'll do it a little bit shorter. Depends on the starting point. Obviously, it depends on the goals and stuff. Yeah. Personally, I found it okay. Like, you sort of get into the swing of things. Like, when you're in a prep and you're in a deficit, it just becomes life, doesn't it? So an extra week or 2 weeks, it just is what it is, and you just carry on. So I wouldn't say it was, I think it would be harder doing a shorter one where my food would be lower, my energy would be lower. I think that would be more difficult.
Yeah, no, for sure. I agree. Like, there's times when it gets to a point when it's not boring, but you kind of just think, I've been doing this for so long now, and it's not, I don't feel bad, my food's not low, but because I'm being so on it 24/7, sometimes you kind of just feel like, this has been gone for so long. But again, I hear some of the, I'm going to call them horror stories of what people do to get into condition, and I just don't know how they do it.
It's just so unnecessary. Like
Yeah.
it can't. I mean, it's not easy. It's definitely not easy,
Oh,
but it doesn't have to be that hard either.
No. Sub 1,000 calories and hours and hours of cardio daily. Like that's like, I know it's hard, but it shouldn't be torturous, and it shouldn't make you want to hate. I feel like with a lot of people, it will make them hate the sport because the experience will be so bad. But
yeah, I think a lot of people think they have to go through stuff like that, and that's what a prep should be like, but it really doesn't have to be like that. I think that, like I said, my food never got too low, like cardio was never crazy high. I think it's just you're in a really prolonged deficit, so it's gonna get hard just because of that reason, regardless of what you're doing and stuff. So you might as well make it as easy as possible.
Absolutely. Now coming on sort of the flip side of that, so that's the dieting side. Now the fun side, the off-season growing side of things. I think people underestimate how difficult it is as a female to build muscle, and especially for sort of more muscular categories, like now figures obviously not huge, but it is still a more muscled category, and especially in federations like you said, PCA, girls can hold quite a lot of muscle mass, and obviously in those federations girls could have some sort of assistance, not saying they all do, but there will definitely be girls on that stage who have got assistance. So what things have you learned from as being a female trying to build muscle, and maybe some tips and advice you could give to people who, girls especially, who are wanting to build muscle as a natural athlete?
I think definitely like something that I never really focused on until I got a coach was just progressive overload. Like I think, to be honest, all the years that I trained prior to that, I made pretty good progress considering I've never put a lot of focus in progressive overload.
Yeah.
But I think that's just, I've just got obviously more capabilities to build a muscle, which is a good thing genetically. But it wasn't until I actually started focusing on pushing my numbers up every single week and doing the same thing week after week. I think too many girls, well, men and women, they just chop and change things, or just don't pay attention to the numbers and the weights they're lifting and everything, and just don't log their lifts. I think like you've just, maybe it's boring sometimes doing the same sessions week after week. It does get boring sometimes, but the fun comes from chasing the numbers.
100%.
And if you can do that every week, you're going to gain muscle. And not enough people do that, and it's not easy. Like I'm sure you've had comments like it yourself, like people saying, I've had clients say it to me, and members of the gym and stuff, like, oh, you told me I wouldn't get muscly if I lift weights, and look at you. And I'm like, it's not easy. Like this was not easy.
No, it's not a case of just picking up a barbell every couple of days and swinging it around. It's like you said, it's consistent training now, you know, the same plan for weeks and months on end, and just repeating it. And
that's it, rinsing and repeating
it. It sounds cliche and generic, but, and also something that I learned as well was learning what sort of actually training to failure and training hard is. Because when I first sort of came onto social media and yourself, you'll see girls training, and it's the Gymsharky models, and they still manage to do a couple of curls and a couple of lateral raises, still looking pretty decent.
Yeah.
You know, they look like they're doing a photo shoot, when in reality it is ugly. And I'm going to say how it is. Like, actually training to failure and learning what that was and how it is it's really hard. It is really hard. It's not easy.
You've got to dig deep, haven't you? And I think it's all relative. Like, a lot of people don't realise how far they can actually push themselves. And
no.
I know it sounds simple, but until they get themselves there. So it's just a case of just pushing and pushing, which is why I think the logbook's important. Because, and if you get like, I'm probably a little bit too obsessed with my numbers to the point where I'll go into a session and I'm like, I have to beat these. Like, I'm not leaving until I do. But I think that's kind of what has allowed me to make the progress that I've made, because you just have to push yourself. And I think that's when you start to find what you're capable of, because 100%. There's no other option.
100%.
But that's another reason why logging your lifts is just so important. You need to know where to work off of. Definitely.
100%. That's something I preach to clients as well. So in terms of that, pushing yourself to that point, is that something that you've just managed to do yourself? Is that something that having AJ on board has helped you to do, make you realise your potential, or is it just something that you just unlocked yourself through just pushing numbers?
It's definitely from like when you see people train, like when AJ trains, you see where he takes himself to. You see, and there's plenty of people that you watch online. So I guess it's from seeing people as well. But I am the type of person who kind of pushes myself as much as I can, and I think that just works well with training. It just
Absolutely.
sort of, yeah.
Absolutely. For me, I thought I was doing it, and again, I don't know what the gym like that you're training in is like. My first ever gym, the gym I actually work in now, actually, is very like a pure gym, an everyman gym, and people there train. They're hard, but there's hard, and then I feel like there's bodybuilding hard, if you know what I mean. Like the people you see on Instagram doing these sets that I think to the general population you just think get a grip, but to us we watch that and like you get goosebumps. And moving to a gym where I was seeing people doing that, I started to then push myself to that. And then I went for a one-on-one session with my coach Vicky in January, February time, and that took me to a different place. And I think seeing, like you said, other people doing it, people who you respect in the industry, then shows you that actually, yeah, you can take yourself to that place 100%. But is there any sort of mistakes you've made? Like you said, obviously maybe not log booking, but is there anything else maybe you've learned, mistakes you've made in the past from training? One you said as well was, chasing numbers. Is that being detrimental at times? Actually then maybe losing form, focus?
I wouldn't say it's more detrimental on my like mindset more than anything. I wouldn't say like, because I'm quite like, I'm a little bit obsessive with form as well, to the point where it probably holds me back just that little bit. Because sometimes you do have to just lose form just a tiny bit.
Sure.
And I'll sometimes sort of, if something doesn't look quite right or quite perfect, it'll annoy me and it'll get me down. But so if I wasn't to hit numbers and stuff, it's like I said, it's more of a mindset thing. So I'll beat myself up quite a bit if I don't hit particular numbers, which isn't great. It's not great. And it's something that I'm learning to do, is sort of detach myself from the numbers just that little bit. Like I need to find the balance between being able to push myself to beat the numbers, but also accepting when I can't, because sometimes the stars just aren't aligned to do that. Like other things can be affected. Like one of my big mistakes, especially like during prep, is just not prioritizing recovery and resting properly. So my sleeps, as a PC, I'm sure you know, like it's atrocious. Sleep is atrocious, and I don't quite know how I had such a successful prep on like 5 to 6 hours sleep a night. It's horrendous. So that's something that, like, a mistake is something, not prioritizing that, just in like general terms for health purposes. That's definitely something that that needs to change. But with regards to training, I wouldn't say I've ever like I said, I think I just got the right information about it. I think the biggest mistake for me is just not doing stuff like progressive overload. I was quite good with nutrition when I first got into it. Again, I had the right information, so I ate and I grew. But it's more just focusing on the smaller things like progressive overload, log booking, eating a particular way, like stuff like that. Just being a bit more precise. I think if I could have done that a bit sooner, then I'd be a lot further along by now.
100%. That we can all look back and think, oh, I wish I'd done that sooner.
Yeah.
So in terms of your previous prep, what things have you learned from that? So you mentioned that your sort of the mid shows look was better, and what are you going to transfer from that prep into future preps, and what are the sort of, you've touched on them, the future plans in terms of competing and the sort of long-term goals?
So I was going to compete next year. That was the plan, but I wanted to take this year to get myself into a better position to start a prep again, which is happening a lot slower than I would have liked. So that's the main reason I probably won't compete until 2022 now. But also because I wanted to enjoy my year, go out for some meals, go on holiday and stuff like that, which obviously no one's doing at the moment. So the likelihood is it's going to be quite some time before I compete again. Which is great, because it's going to allow me to get into good routines with stuff like recovery and resting and keeping stress lower, and just developing some good habits. Because I would say, like, my last prep, I was very food focused, like very, very food focused. Like I said, I didn't prioritize recovery, didn't prioritize sleep. I would say posing could have been done so much more than it was. I'd left my routines until like the day before and then started practicing them. Like it's stuff like that. Like it's the little things. Like I was very good at ticking the boxes daily that were required, but then the little things that were up to me to do, that's the sort of stuff that I would next time round put a lot more focus in. Yeah, definitely. So like prioritizing sleep, prioritizing like stretching, sports massage, stuff like that.
Why are we so bad as like PTs and stuff for stretching? Like, tell them to do it. It's so important, and we're shocking, aren't we?
Yeah, the worst.
Shocking. And sort of long-term plans, like sort of what sort of like you mentioned, you want to get back on that world stage. Is it pro card you're looking at? What sort of the long-term goals and hopes?
Yeah, that's the next goal. So I'd like to get my pro card in figure on the WNBF stage. That is like, it's not the end goal, but that's the next goal basically. So I'll be competing definitely in the UK DFBA. I loved competing in the BNBF, so if it aligns well, then I'd like to do that as well. And like I said, PCA, just for the fun of it.
Just advance. So 2022 is what it's sort of looking and shaping up to be.
Probably, yeah, probably.
Excellent. One less person to compete against next year. Because I'd be looking at DFBA as well.
Cool.
But again, it's all just going to be as to what comes out when and where I'm at, because obviously this has not been an optimal year for everything. And
no, you've just got to see what happens, haven't you? Like that's kind of what I'm like with regards to like the position I'm at the moment with my food and stuff. Still coming off the back of that prep, it's nowhere near the position it needs to be in for another prep. So it's just a case of seeing where I'm at next year and then 100%. Making a decision then. I'm sure you're the same.
Yeah, because it'll just depend now as to what I do, because I've come off it obviously, because shows they're going ahead but they're not. Like, are they going ahead? And if they do, they're going to be weird. They're going to be socially distanced, this, and it'll be my first time, and I'm sure you can understand and appreciate how important that first show is, and that it's something you'll never forget. You'll want it to be an experience that matters.
Yeah, definitely. So, I think when you said like there potentially couldn't be audiences, that just sounds horrendous. Like I said, the show in Perth, it was a lot quieter, and the atmosphere was just like, it just in comparison to like a full audience, it makes all the difference.
Absolutely.
So I can't imagine being on stage with no audience.
No.
But for all the competitors that were prepping this year and then had their shows cancelled, literally my heart just broke for them.
Yeah,
I just can't imagine going through that and then having your show taken away from you.
The people that were close, that for me it was, well, originally I thought I'd be okay, because at first it was like April, May shows. I thought, September will be right.
Yeah.
As time's progressed, that's obviously changed, as this has gone on for well much longer than we all anticipated. So yeah, those people that were 2, 3, 4 weeks out, it's horrendous, especially people first time, and they never got that experience. But it's what it is.
Yeah, exactly. There's nothing. Everyone's in the same boat. There's not much we can do about it. So
nothing you can do about it. And for me as well, there was that thing of like, even if, let's just say, a miracle happens tomorrow and COVID-19 goes away, it's gone. Could happen, you never know. Probably won't. But and everything then goes back to normal. Shows go ahead. I still wouldn't want to get on stage, because I know that even with some decent home equipment, and you can probably relate, that just without the atmosphere and everything going on, you just feel like your training's not quite there, and you can't do the same machines. And yes, I've got enough weight to do some decent stuff, and I've been working my hardest, but it just doesn't mentally feel the same.
No, not at all. I don't know about you, but it's so, and I'm sure everyone's in the same, but it's so much harder to be motivated to train at home and to enjoy it in the same way. I think as well, with the fact that there aren't shows going on, there aren't things for you to sort of look at and be motivated by, it's very hard to keep that goal in mind.
100%. And obviously you probably had your clients say it to you as well, and you'll say, look, even me who absolutely loves this is my life, I'm struggling. and I'm in a deficit as well, so that doesn't help, does it, when like
No.
motivation's not there anyway. I've been very fortunate these last sort of few weeks to have, it's just a different place. Someone's got a little mini garage that I'm using because they don't use it, so I've basically taken my equipment down there, and that's helped just being somewhere different. But when I've been using my back garden, it's just, I think it's that thing of you can't dissociate the fact that that's home.
Yeah, that's your place of rest, isn't
That's
it?
your place of rest. That's your place of, especially for people like us who train like nutters, because that's what we do. We push ourselves.
Yeah.
It's very hard to get into that mindset of attacking a set when your dog's trotting next to you. And
I don't know about you, but my neighbours can see straight into my garden, so they see me like screaming, and they also see me posing on my own.
yeah.
They're probably like, what a weirdo.
I've had my mum in the kitchen before, and I'm there like trying to like phlegm lats, and she's like, "You okay?" I'm like, "Yeah." And times I've had to train inside because of the weather as well, because Jesus Christ, it's horrendous.
I get AJ laughs at me about this because I absolutely hate the wind. Like, on another level, it brings out a pure rage in me. So if it's windy, even the thought of having to go outside to train, it just sets me off, and it's horrible. I hate it. But like you said, it is what it is. We've got to do it. So
it is, and we've just, the fact you can just crack on and get on with it, just what's got to be done. Just get your head down, just get it done. But it's not the same enjoyment. It's not the same feeling you get afterwards, which I think the thing I miss the most is not necessarily like the machines itself or the atmosphere, but that feeling you get when you leave after a good session, that euphoria, that even if you feel absolutely battered, that's I think what I miss the most. Because
I'd agree.
Anyone who's into fitness will understand that feeling, and that's what keeps me doing it. Like,
exactly,
100%.
Yeah,
so I did get a few questions on the little Q&A come through. Most of them are sort of just related to sort of competing and stuff, and then there's one that's like, there's always one about food or something. And people always bring that in.
Everyone loves talking about food.
Of course they do. So the first one was, obviously, if you don't mind talking about this, how was your sort of post-show experience in terms of food rebound, binges, ETCs, what they've put there as well?
So post-show, I gained a lot of weight pretty quick. I think I gained about 30 pounds in like 2 months. But I wouldn't say that was like, as much as I wanted to, I wouldn't say that was necessarily like, I didn't have binges, I would say. I think I just ate out a lot, and I just enjoyed myself, and I just didn't say no to things. If I wanted to go out and have food, I'd have it. So I gained weight relatively quickly. I was uncomfortable with it at first. Like, I'd go to the gym and I'd be wearing long sleeves and stuff, because it was more like I didn't want people to look at me and think, oh, she's let herself go, she's done what everyone does. But you get used to it. I think it's because it's such a quick transition. You gain that weight so quickly, which isn't optimal, and I definitely won't be doing that this next time, hopefully. I think it's just you change so quickly that it's hard to sort of get used to it, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's like, I guess if someone starts wearing glasses, it'll take you some time to get used to it. So I was a bit uncomfortable with it at first, but it subsided. Like, I've never had huge issues with my weight or anything like that. I don't have issues when I'm in the off season being a bit bigger. It is what it is. With regards to like food focus and stuff like that, I'm still absolutely starving now. Like, I don't think I have a time when I'm not hungry. Wow. Which sucks, but the time will come. Like, to be fair, last year when I was in my off season, I don't think I ever got to the point, when people talk about eating and they get to a point where they just can't eat anymore when they're on high calories. I never hit that point. No. So that's a bit tiresome. I think what helped was just the post-show was just getting into a routine again. So I think I only took about a week off. So although I was going out and eating a lot of food, after a week I had my calories to hit. I had my set macros and everything as a target, and I had my training plan and everything. I just got straight back onto it. And I think having that and having that structure again, without that, it would have been even worse.
Yeah.
I think definitely.
Yeah. Next one, tips you can give Lucy, aka me, for her first prep. I like that question.
Oh, in what terms? Like food?
I mean, it's a question box on Instagram, so they've not given any much more expansion on that. Just
I would say definitely practice the posing a lot, like every day. One, like, I'm just going to tell you the stuff that I should have done or should not have done, because that's all I can recommend. So practicing the posing. Do not follow food accounts on Instagram. Do not subscribe to people who do 10,000 calorie challenges. Like, do your absolute best to not look at food and stuff like that, because it's only going to make it worse. Like, you can't have it. I would sit there and watch like 20,000 calorie challenges, or I'd start saving. I had like hit lists of food that I was going to try afterwards and places that I wanted to try. And as much as I was told, don't watch these things, you can't help it. But you just sort of like, you can just power through, and you're focusing on what really matters rather than focusing on after the show, because that's when you're going to be able to have that stuff. So keep the goal clear in your mind rather than focusing on what you're going to be able to do after that goal is achieved. I'd say that's one of the big things.
No, I can sort of relate to that now, because I don't think I mentioned it to you, but I don't know if you know as well, but when I was originally just going to carry on with the prep, that was the original goal, because we thought September shows would be fine. And then it got to about April, May, and I was like, this doesn't look good. But by then it'd been so many months, and I thought, well, I really had this year as a goal to do something like this. I really wanted to give it a go, but I don't want to do a show because they're either not going to go ahead or they're going to be weird. So we're just doing a photo shoot at the end of next month, so I'm still sort of on a prep for it. So I know exactly what you mean about that. Like, the other day I was doing cardio, and I always sometimes like to put on a YouTube video just to pass the time, to do on the spin bike. And I found myself starting to type in like calorie challenge videos. Like, what are you doing? Like,
it literally serves no benefit at all.
Absolutely not. No. And the last week I've been running it's nothing to do with like fat loss or anything. So I've had that, you're doing this to lose my weight. I ran like a very basic bro diet just for digestion purposes. So literally bland chicken, rice, that sort of thing. And in some aspects it's been horrendous in that it's so boring. But in others, it's been the best thing I've done in totally removing food focus, and because you're not trying to make meals taste nicer, you're not looking forward to meals, if that makes sense.
I think that's a really good approach.
I don't know if I could do it for the whole 28 weeks, but I actually want to try and keep this up for the next few weeks as we're introducing foods. I don't even necessarily want to bring things back in, because I'm not thinking about my next meal in terms of, I can feel I'm hungry, but I'm not like excited, so I can then focus on life stuff.
I think that's a good approach. And I think up until about 8 weeks out from my first show, I was completely like chopping and changing what I was eating. I was just eating what I fancied with regards to like what fit in my macros. But when it came to 8 weeks out, I flicked the switch and was eating exactly the same thing day in, day out. And I think that it almost becomes necessary at some point, just like you said, to remove that attachment to the food. So you don't have to think about it. You've got it there and then you just move on.
100%. Question, I guess this could apply to both of us. Will you go to the dark side?
I love that. I don't think so.
No.
I think it's too much of a commitment for me as well. Like, I don't like the idea of being, I think once you go down that route, you're down that route, and but I'd like to see what I'm capable of, like natural. I'd just like to see how far I can take myself in those terms. How about you?
That's how I feel. Like, I've not even competed yet, and I think honestly, I personally don't see a reason to especially as a female, to go assisted if you're not going to compete. So it's just purely egotistic. I mean, sport is.
I think it's for males as well, though.
You're true, yeah. And I might not like it. I might get on stage and think this is awful, and I'd never want to compete ever again in my life. Or I can't see that happening, but you never know. And again, I would just like to push everything naturally, and it's just something that I'm not even considering now. Like, it's just not even a consideration or a contemplation at all.
Yeah, I think
Future,
it's like,
who knows? But now, no.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I mean, when people ask, it's like, well, would I? And you kind of think about it, but there's so many more pros to not doing it.
Yeah.
And I think what would be really cool, I'd love to go, like another reason for maybe going on like a PCA stage would be very cool to go up against women who are assisted
Yeah.
and beat them. Like, I would really like to see that. I think it would be pretty cool.
Yeah, that's why I sort of wanted, because I knew I'd be stacked up against, because I was going to do a PCA as well this year. I'd potentially be stacked up against girls who have used something or other. But if you then place or do well and you've beaten that, then you like you said, it'll be such a good feeling to know that you don't need this stuff to push it.
Exactly, it's not necessary. Yeah,
absolutely not. Final question from the question box was favourite cheat meal. I hate that term, but
I hate that. I don't think I've ever used that term for myself in my life. Never,
because what are you cheating on? What are you cheating? I don't know. Favourite off-plan meal. Shall we rephrase it?
I wouldn't even say that because I don't have a plan per se.
Favourite not.
Favourite less nutritious meal.
Less macronutrient optimal efficient meal of choice.
I don't know. Actual meal or just food? You
see, I'm like that because I have things rather than actual meals. Should we do one of each? Like go for a meal and then go for like a thing.
See, meal, like, because unless you have like a big old dirty pizza, I wouldn't say any type of meal is better, or obviously they're slightly more nutritious or less nutritious than others, but I wouldn't put any particular meal in that kind of category.
Yeah.
You know, so I guess I'd say pizza probably for that, like, or just a massive bowl of pasta. Like, I could literally eat a fucking bowl like this of pasta, which I guess would be really high calories. So let's say that could be more on verging on the side of off plan.
So, yeah. Pizza, yeah, I do like Pizza Hut pizza. I do like a Pizza Hut pizza, I won't lie. And then I don't know, maybe like I love fajitas. Like I absolutely love fajitas, but I think I'd like to, what I want to do after I finish this is have like fajitas, but not have to worry about tracking anything. You know what I mean? Like, you know, when you go out and have them, and you can just load up as much guac and sour cream as you want and not have to think about it, because they're not bad for you, and they're not the worst thing you could have. But I guess when you would put as much cheese and stuff as you want, maybe so.
I just want to go to like a buffet and just
that's a good option. That's a good shout.
I'd probably do that. Yeah.
About thing, like you said, sort of like not necessarily a meal, like
just pastry. Oh my god. Just like I could just demolish pastries. Like when I was on prep, what I craved most, to be fair, was donuts and pastry, like Danish pecan twists. Oh, actually, no, cookies as well. I'm just
sweet food, yeah.
Yeah.
I do like cookie dough. Cookie dough's pretty decent. And then cheesecake. Cheesecake is my life.
We were in obviously the Worlds was in New York.
Yes.
I've never been to America, so I was like, oh my god, I can go to the Cheesecake Factory all day. We all went there the next day. Sorry?
Never been. I've always wanted to.
It was, well, I'm sure at another time it would have been even better, but like we all went the next day, and I think I got like lemon ricotta pancakes, and I couldn't even, it was just sweetness overload. Like the day after finishing Worlds, I couldn't finish half of them. I bought a cheesecake, I managed like 2 bites, and it just made my stomach hated it, and I ended up giving it away, which was heartbreaking. But
God. Wow. And the final question, which is my signature question, which gets asked at the end of every podcast: your favourite cereal? Cereal is life.
Wheatos, without a doubt. Like Wheatos, I've eaten them since I was a child. I used to load the fucking, excuse my language, that should have been one of my fun facts, is that I have like a terrible mouth. I used to load the bowl up, load it up with milk because I love milk, and then not finish it. Like, not because I didn't like it. When they'd start to go soggy, I just couldn't eat them anymore. And our toilet always had Wheatos down it because I'd throw them down the toilet. But I used to get toys in them as well, which I think is why I probably loved them so much as a child. But I still love them. I don't get to eat them as much, but
no, but they are decent. That's a decent choice for sure.
How about you?
It's dependent. Now, obviously because you depends what your macros are like, what your macros are saying, don't it, as well.
Yeah.
Probably my ultimate favourite one that I've ever had. Aldi did it last year, and I've never seen it since. It was like a one-off American special. It was like peanut butter and cocoa balls.
Oh my
And
god.
it was stupidly good. Like, to the point where I got it for my birthday last year, and I'd like come off a diet then because I did like a sort of elongated cut last year. So I was just sort of eating whatever they wanted. It was gone in like 2 days. Gone. But unreal. But I've never seen it since. And like I've never seen
Did you
anything
try?
replicated.
Aldi always have really good specials. Did you see the Shreddies? It was a Halloween special, I think. It was like toffee and apple.
They were average.
Oh, I loved them. I couldn't stop dipping my hand in them. What else? Oh god, there's too many. Just cereal in general, like
Cereal in general. Not nothing dead. Like I think like Rice Krispies and Cocoa Pops are like for when you're tracking macros, they've got their place, but I wouldn't choose them. Like
nah.
there's so many good ones out there.
I think that's probably, to be fair, actually going back to the question about the meal, I'd just have a huge bowl of cereal.
Yeah, 100%. Weetabix minis, they're pretty decent. The chocolate ones.
Yeah, true. Just all
It's not
of
good
them.
to be talking about this right now.
I know, yeah, I'm starving.
I'm literally starving, waiting for meal one of like a boring one as well, but wishing it was a ball. No, it's fine.
I've got oats next, which is like one of the best.
I'm not even got oats. I've got rice flake porridge at the moment, which is not oats. It's not oats, but it does the job. Anyways, we're on for the tangent. Let's wrap up the podcast there. Once again, everyone, thank you for listening, and I will leave Grace's Instagram handle, whatever you want to call it, in the description. Thanks for joining us, Grace, and giving up your time.
Thank you very much for having me.
It's been a pleasure, and we'll see you in the next one.